All right, here we go.
Happening now. It's not a question of Ukraine, Russia, or even the European continent. It's not. It's much. It has much more. It has much more scale. And I would like to say, you asked about the tanks, about the decision of the United States to supply tanks. I think everything is clear. Such a position concerns everyone. I believe that the only one country poses, or even neutral, I think it's Germany. I mean, which a kind of a neutral. This is another story. We all remember what are German tanks. These are machines which became a symbol not only of death, not only of deathly ideology. They become a symbol of misanthropy as a global existential threat to the planet. When you read about Nazism and fascism, about those times in the Second World War, I think that these SS uniform and these very German tanks and symbols of the Third Reich had become a global symbol of the fall of the humankind into this abyss of hatred and horror and massacre. All of us, back then and after, were saved by the soldiers of the Red Army and anti-Hitler coalition, these young soldiers and all those who on the ground engaged there as medical officers. It was exactly the German tanks which became the symbol, anti-symbol, I would say, which will be stay in the memory of a humankind forever. Now these German tanks will once again be on our land. They think so. They have such a task. They received such a task. So what Berlin expects, that this armored vehicle with all its symbols back then and now, that it will cross our villages and settlements. We remember the end of that times. Does Berlin remember? The main thing, they should understand that no moral right to supply their armored equipment they have. No. I would like to draw attention to the words voiced in Bundestag when one deputy declared while addressing to Mr. Scholz. He said that this is a historical day, that Scholz has just destroyed all the foundations of the German foreign policy foundations, and Germany bears all responsibility for the victims of the Second World War. He meant 6 million Jews, as well as 20 million men, women, and children who died on the territory of the Soviet Union. He also reminded in Bundestag building that the precursors, the great precursors of the current authorities, I mean Willy Brandt, Gerhard Schmidt, this is a point of view of the Germans, not mine, had made a lot for the peace and reconciliation. As the German deputy Willy Brandt received even a Nobel Prize of the World, the slogan "Never" meant denial to supply weapons in the zones of conflict. It has always been a core of the foreign policy of Germany, as mentioned by the German politician. But people want to remain in the history in various ways. Germany understands that no moral or legal or ethical right it has to supply armored vehicles and tanks to kill the Russian people. Berlin just has no such rights. When they say Russians, we have enough videos when in the Ukrainian armed forces, these very young men were pushed to the front line because they were persecuted along Ukraine by this Nazi regime who stay in their protected areas, that they speak Russian. Don't you understand that the members of the one even family confronted and made a kind of a belligerent parties, then even a mother can feel all the pain when one her son is on one side and another is on the other side of the war, because everything had been done for many years in order to destroy Ukraine, take into account its complicated history, its multinational composition, and the first years of this so-called independence and freedom, which many people dreamt of, which should start not from the abuse, but from the responsibility. And right now, these bloody dividing lines through the hearts of many people in these regions, they will be felt by the German tanks.
And Olaf Scholz dared to make this step. Why? Let's be honest. There are historical figures in the world, and there are nobodies. There are people that are ready to sacrifice a lot for their beliefs and their convictions, not because they're proud of them, not because they think of themselves exceptional, but because they understand that this is humanity. And on the other hand, there are those people that have the political gravitas and the material capabilities, and they have necessary support from the electorate, but they don't have the spirit to make the correct choices and not to repeat the mistakes of their ancestors that the German people paid a huge price for. I would like to remind Mr. Schultz. I'm not even talking about Madame Madeleine Baerbock. This is useless. But Schultz was troubled in his decision. Perhaps he doesn't know. But when German POWs were in the territory of the USSR after the end of the war, they were not mistreated in a way that our soldiers and our POWs and civilians were mistreated by Germans. Those German soldiers were fed by the very people that had nothing to eat for years. Those people fed them. And you know, Mr. Schultz, my grandmother, for her entire life, was looking at bread as the most precious dish, told me how this post war bread that was scarce was used by the Soviet people to feed German POWs that previously had burned our villages and were murdering our children, getting them into houses and burning them. When I asked her once, Grandma, you didn't have enough bread for yourselves. How could you, after going through it all, could share your bread with those who was hell bent on killing you? You know, Mr. Schultz, what my grandma told me. She told me, Masha, we pitied them. Pity not the same kind that you call tolerance, but we pitied them and we loved them. We had our spiritual force to share our bread even with the enemy, despite the fact that we lacked it ourselves. You in the West have lost any idea of the true values that lie at the base of our humanity, namely love. To believe that the West is supplying German tanks to the place that those German tanks have brought immense suffering to by destroying tens of millions of people, it's truly impossible. It's impossible to imagine that in general you know anything about love, compassion, honor, conscience. I also remember very well that a couple of years ago, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany, Mr. Steinmeier, visited Volgograd as part of an official delegation who kneeled before knelt before the graves of our soldiers and the graves of the German soldiers that also lay in these grounds. And he said that this should not be repeated in any way. The day it was decided that leopards were allowed to be sent to Ukraine is historical. It is historical because it has cemented the thing that we talked about, that Germany has completely lost its sovereignty. And Scholz just signed this rejection of independent foreign policy forever. He rejected everything that was built by his predecessors for decades after the Second World War, and they succeeded in their task. And we will not be surprised if Leopards in the Bundeswehr will be replaced by the American made Abrams tanks because it's profitable to Washington, from us, and Berlin cannot be asked about those decisions even. Then nothing now. Madame Merkel perhaps tried to balance herself between her own national interest and the pressure that was exerted upon the German people and the entire country by the US administration. The United States have always been treating their occupied countries in that way, but now that's it. Washington's goals were enunciated last year during the hearings in the US Congress by Victoria Nuland is to inflict a strategic defeat upon Russia. As for the United States, I've commented upon that in different parts of our briefing. I can only say that there is no difference in shipping this military equipment. Only one country makes a true difference.
Hmm. Well, How about that? That is something. I did tear up a little bit. Um, Lori, never worry about doing something when I'm doing something. I mean, you know, it's God's world. There's enough blessings for all of us. So I'm not worried about that at all. Speaking of tomorrow, I'm gonna do another spiritual stream in the vein of Maria there, you know. Um, it's at moments like that that I feel more than ever we are justified, as Russell Texas Bentley would say, to put these mad dogs down. That's a human impulse to someone that's hurt you or hurt someone you love or hurt your kids. If you guys have never seen Come and See, watch the last 30 minutes of Come and See, where the Nazis round up all the women and children in a town, shove them in a barn in Ukraine, light it on fire, and giggle outside while people scream. That actually happened. And there's one part of the movie where I'm pretty sure he says, "I'll let you go if you leave your children inside." So real messed up. I mean, they're just playing with people. Yes, it is a great movie. Hey, Lori, I love it. Many as possible. But yeah, that's why I like doing those spiritual streams and what I'll do on tomorrow. Because what's more powerful? The only thing that hits you harder than putting down a Nazi like that is to love them and pity them and show them kindness. That's the best part of humanity. To love somebody who doesn't deserve it. And when I see that lady talk, and when I just hear the Russians talk, I'll be honest, you know, I feel that kind of Christian energy behind it. You know, Caleb said before that communism was just 20th century Christianity. Stalin was out of the seminary. And we can't forget that in this quest to build a better world. We got to keep loving each other. Doesn't mean we don't defend ourselves, but we love our enemies as Christ taught us to. We defend ourselves and we defend ours. That's real Christianity. But you also love them. And on that note, I'll put all the support me stuff in the description. I'm going to go cuddle my babies and love on them. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great one. Peace.